At the Sports History Network, we're proud to introduce you to a new sponsor for our podcasts. It's Home Field Apparel, your premium collegiate apparel brand right out of Indianapolis. They've got incredibly comfortable t-shirts, plus they're officially licensed with vintage college designs. They have over 150 plus colleges available now and always adding more. Homefield digs through the archives and history of your school to find unique logos, mascots, and moments to make thoughtful designs for your school. When you shop today, new customers can get a 15% discount off their first purchase using the promo code SPORTSHISTORY at checkout. You can learn more at homefieldapparel.com.
It's Tuesday and time to get a visit from Timothy Brown of Football Archaeology to talk about some more great gridiron history on football officiating. Tim's got the insight from digging in his tidbits on football archaeology through some old newspapers, and he's bringing us the scoop in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. It's Tuesday, and we are going to join our friend Timothy Brown, the great historian and author that digs into the archaeology of football each and every day, but shares a little tidbit with us each week. And today, Tim's got a great topic. Tim Brown, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Thank you much. Looking forward to chatting once again and seeing where the conversation goes.
Yeah, you know how I'm a former official, so I've got the zebra blood still flowing in me. It's been a few years, but I'm still in the brotherhood. I don't think they kicked me out yet. And you have some great history on the officiating of the game, and we talked a few weeks ago about it. But you have some more insight in it, and some more gentlemen that are responsible for some of the things that officials do. So I was hoping you could talk about that today.
Yeah. So, a couple weeks ago, I wrote an article about a guy named Herb Dana, and it was called Herb Dana and the Associated Football Question Box, which is a mouthful of, kind of a word salad. But so Herb Dana was a guy that he played end at Nebraska. He was on their 1921 team. That was his senior season, and then moved to Denver and started officiating there, doing some of kind of the Rocky Mountain sorts of games, and then he moved to San Francisco, and very quickly quickly rose up the ranks and became one of the top officials in the Pacific Coast Conference, what's now the Pac-8 or Pac-12 or Pac-10, whatever they are right now, and so. Part of the reason I raised him, or one of the interesting things about his story, is that he was not scheduled to officiate in the 1929 Rose Bowl, but the guy who was the scheduled referee, a guy named Frank Birch, who we mentioned a couple of episodes ago, and he's the guy who invented the referee's penalty signals that we all know and love today. But a couple of weeks before the Rose Bowl, he tore his ligaments, so he couldn't officiate, and they brought in Herb Dana instead. And so, the 1929 Rose Bowl doesn't mean a lot to most people, but that is the game when a guy named Roy Regals, who was playing for California, picked up a Georgia Tech fumble and got turned around and ran the wrong way. And then his teammates stopped him in the corner of the field at the 1 yard line. And they basically tackled him and stopped him before he went into the end zone and for a safety. But so the referee then, who actually marked the ball in that particular case was this guy, Herb Dana. So that was, he was in on, one of the most important plays or most famous plays in the history of football. So I just, thought that was kind of cool. But, Dana, the other thing about him that's something that just, it was a big part of football back in the, turn of the century through to maybe World War II. Officials often, so a lot of the officials were former players, and many of them were also like sports writers, and even if they weren't sports writers, a lot of times they'd write columns for the newspapers, and they became basically media personalities. So there was a guy, George Varnell, who some people called the Walter Camp of the West. He was a sports writer in Seattle, and as well as out near in Pullman, prior to that. But he was, I think he officiated more Rose Bowls than anybody else. So he was a big time referee on the West Coast. He was on the Football Rules Committee, but he was a sports writer, and here he'd be writing all kinds of, he'd be making predictions about upcoming games, including the ones he was going to referee. He'd name all conference teams, all kinds of things like that.
That gets a little hairy to do that.
Well, but it happened all the time. Another guy, Walter Eckersall, he was All-American halfback at Chicago, became a sports writer for the Chicago Tribune, and he'd travel with the team. He'd travel with the team that was going to play. He traveled with the Great Lakes, team, from 1918, 1919. But again, same kind of thing. He profiled these teams. He made predictions, all kinds of things, and like he'd referee the game and then write a column about it, and then editorialize about it, over the next couple of days. And that's just, it's a conflict of interest that they didn't view as a conflict of interest. But, for us nowadays, there's no way, you could allow that to happen. So Dana was that same kind of guy on the West Coast. And one of the things that's included in that particular blog post is, some time back, I bought a postcard, and it was this pre-printed card that basically gave, you'd go and you'd pick it up at a local gas station, and it was particular, the Flying A brand of gas. And you'd then take that postcard and you'd write a football question, especially a football rules question, and you'd mail it to Dana, and he would answer that either in the newspaper column, or he also hosted a 90-minute radio show at the time that was then syndicated across, the West Coast and the Rockies. So this, again, this is a guy, he was as big a media personality as most coaches. Everybody knew who Herb Dana was. So it's just that, it's a different time, and he, here he's answering these questions. He's predicting who's going to win the big game this coming weekend. And then he, not too long after all that was happening, he became the head of officials for the Pacific Coast Conference, and he was still doing those radio shows, at the time. So just a very different, it was a different time and place, just, we can't imagine it today.
Yeah, I can see, and I think he's done it. Mike Pereira has done. That's probably our face of officials nowadays that we get used to, and he's got a great way of explaining the rules and everything. But I don't know if I'd ever hear Mike Pereira saying, "Hey, I'm officiating a game today, and I think Stanford's going to win by 3."
Yeah,
I just can't. That blows my mind.
But
Different
okay,
time.
so the other thing is the same thing happened with coaches. So John Heisman was a big, very, very smart guy. And he wrote all kinds of columns, and some of it were just, things where he diagrammed plays and but, he offered his opinion on lots of different things. Any number, there's a lot of coaches that they would do like a series of 20 different articles, just quick little things, diagramming plays, or talking about some technique. And those would be published, syndicated newspapers across the country, for a season. So a lot of coaches did that. Rockne did that. And Rockne used to predict, he'd talk about who's the better teams he never saw, because they didn't have television at the time. Now, some of them obviously he had seen, and he'd compare them. He saw somebody playing week 2 and another playing week 8, and he'd offer his opinion on who was going to win the game, But so, coaches did all that kind of stuff too. And Zupke at Illinois was another one that published a lot of articles. And so,
well,
and then,
even Walter Camp, wrote for Collier's quite a bit back in the day.
Camp, Camp's authority came as much from his writing as anything else. Well, obviously, and his role in the rules making, organizations. But he was, if you think about it, he was like, the Vince Lombardi and Paul Zimmerman and a couple other guys all rolled into one, because he was a successful coach. He was a big time official. He was the top writer, prior to like Grantland Rice and those kinds of guys coming along. So, it was, their writing was a really, big time way of their gaining influence. Then it transitioned to radio. And now we have, guys, former coaches or somebody who's knocked out of the playoffs, they come and commentate, during halftime of particular games or, before the game. So same kind of thing going on, but at least now we wait until they're out of now we wait till their team's no longer playing before we let them start talking.
Right. Well, fascinating stuff. And we appreciate you coming on here and sharing that football history with us each week. And why don't you let everybody know once again where they can read your stuff and find you each day?
Yeah. So footballarchaeology.com. That's my website. There's a daily Today's Tidbit that comes out, typically very quick hitting, 30-second, 40-second read with a picture too. Couple times a month, I'll also be posting additional long form kind of information. So the best thing to do is just subscribe to that, and you'll get an email every day typically about 7:00 in the Eastern time zone in the evening. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Football Archaeology, and that's my name there as well.
Well, I can tell you, or my wife can tell you, it's exactly at 7:00 Eastern each day, because we'll be sitting on a couch watching television or something, and she'll hear the ding go off on my phone. And she goes, "What's that?" And I said, "That's Tim getting my tidbit for the day." So,
yeah, sometimes there are a few occasions where I've got something going at 7:00, so I send it out earlier, or I just make a mistake and I don't schedule it correctly. And so
yeah, you mess up my entire evening that way. I don't know what time it is. I set my clock by you. Tim, thank you very much once again, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Okay, Darren, thank you much. Look forward to it.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff, for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
It was just another ordinary day in the offices of the Pittsburgh Guardian newspaper circa 1924. But for Marla Delft, assistant editor, everything was about to change. For she was about to discover the awesome attractiveness of Row 1 brand retro sports paraphernalia items thanks to Orville Mulligan, sports writer.
And there it is.
Wow, Orville, that's really the bee's knees.
Isn't it just? A poster-sized replica of the actual 1909 World Series program cover.
I can see that. But where did you get it? And where'd you get it framed?
I ordered it from the Row 1 website, where over 6,000 items of sports memorabilia from the 1880s to the 1990s are available for reproduction in multiple sizes and in several different materials, with over a dozen styles of frame to choose from for prints like this.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Delft would love to put up more of these in the office. But I'm equally as sure they're beyond this newspaper's budget.
Not at all, my dear Marla. See for yourself. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/row1.
sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. Oh my, these are good prices. Oh, and look at this stuff. Oklahoma-Nebraska football, college basketball art, Michael Jordan items.
And so it
retro
was that
sports
Marla Delft
advertisement
discovered the
placards.
splendiferous magic of Row 1 sports memorabilia, arts, and prints. You can too by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. That's ROW1 today for access to the full Row 1 catalog of gallery prints and gifts like t-shirts, long-sleeve shirts, telephone cases, coffee mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Act today for 15% discount off all prints with coupon code SHN15 and 20% off all other items with coupon code SHN20 at checkout. And keep your dial locked to the Sports History Network for the exciting chronicles of the 1920 sports world in Orville Mulligan, Sports Writer. Coming soon.